If you've listened to the earlier connection theme videos, well, you will know now that the 6 and 3 means that there are 3 centers open, and I'm going to cover the 5 and 4 in this video as well, because it opens some of the same challenges in terms of connectivity. Now, the tagline, better to be free. Well, you would think with 7 and 2, work to do, you would think that 6 and 3 would be even more work to do, because there's more open centers, there's more potential for distraction. Well, the difference really between a 7 and 2 and a 6 and 3 is the nature of the bond. What tends to happen with 7 and 2s is that they will go for the more formalized kind of relationship, marriage in other words, and that becomes the glue to hold them together long enough for the work to be done. Whereas 6 and 3 relationships don't tend to want to formally bond, because it is so difficult to make this any kind of really one-on-one type of connection, because there's so much distraction in a bond like this that you have to really think about a 6 and 3 in a different way. Now, better to be free. Again, it sounds rather negative, and from the not self, the shadow perspective, a 6 and 3 is a difficult configuration, because there's always that longing for oneness, for wholeness, and yet it's just not there in a 6 and 3. But that doesn't mean better to be free, move on, find somebody else. Better to be free means that this can be a new kind of relationship, and typically you'll see out there in the world, certainly in the developed Western world, there's a move away from more formalized marriages and more towards open relationships, and not with the kind of sexual connotations with that, but relationships where there's a lot more room to breathe, where you don't feel like you're chained at the hip and you have to do everything together. This is the nature of a 6 and 3, and certainly for a lot of people in this day and age, a 6 and 3 is a nice union to be in, because you have the benefits of clearly the closeness, the friendship, the socialness. When the transits are correct, you'll get the passion in there, if that's something that's missing in terms of the union. But still, these are relationships that can easily move apart. So you could go on a long business trip, for example, and there's not that overwhelming longing for, oh, I miss my home, I miss my partner, and so on, with a 6 and 3 type union. So this connection thing doesn't mean that you have to be free, but it does mean that you're going to have to think about this type of connection in a different way, because this is a relationship where there's never a truly strong bond between the two people in that connection. But for people that like to spend a great deal of time doing their own thing, maybe they're running a business and they're busy, or they've got some outside fulfillment, charity work that takes a lot of time, well, a 6 and 3 is the perfect kind of connection for that, where you spend a lot of time doing your own thing, but you come together and have that connection every once in a while. There's a wonderful way of looking at this in Holland, for example, because they have this type of relationship where they call it living apart together, meaning that both people in the connection have their own homes. They may even live in different towns. They go to work. They do everything they need to do to maintain their individual life. But they come together maybe one weekend. Partner A goes to partner's B property. They have a lovely weekend together. And then on Monday morning, they go back to their individual lives again. And maybe the next week, partner B goes to partner A's property. So this recognizes the sanctity of the individual, but also recognizes that none of us are here to be alone all of the time. We are a social species, and certainly connectivity is very, very important to us. But if you're in a connection, a 6 and 3, and even a 5 and 4, well, how does the not self deal with this? Well, the not self mind thinks it has the power to fix things, and of course it doesn't. And typically what happens with 6 and 3s, and even more in terms of 5 and 4s, is that there will be a lot of children that starts to emerge from these kinds of relationships, because this is the not self mind in some way trying to fix the holes, the openness in the union, and children coming along, clearly it will create some kind of penta environment for that family, and you don't notice so much the lack of connectivity. Well, what tends to happen if that is the mental driver for being in a relationship, have lots of children because that strengthens our bond together? Well, typically what happens is when the children go off to university, they leave home, well, suddenly you're back to this relationship that's full of holes. The not self mind can't deal with that. Will try and fix things in its way as usual, but typically you're going to end up in a relationship that does pull apart because there's that longing for the glue that's not naturally there. So a 6 and 3 can be perfect for you if that's your way of living your individual life, and you just want the, intimacy that comes with occasional connectivity without that longing for the kind of breathlessness. And you can be kind of cute with a 6 and 3 if you're in this visit them every now and then type of connection, because watch the transit field relative to your connection. You can run a connection transit on the genetic matrix site, and you will be able to see if a transiting planet is bringing definition momentarily in terms of any of the open centers in that connection. And for the duration of that transit, well, you are going to have this sense of togetherness, and that's perfect if it can be correlated with the moments that you come together. So I'm not really differentiating between the 6 and 3 and the 5 and 4, not a relationship anymore. Well, you can see that there's so much distraction in these kinds of relationships. If you're going into it thinking that this is the one, maybe when you meet this person, there is a transit that gives you the illusion that you're in an 8 and 1 or a 9 and 0. And typically Pluto can stay in a gate for 3 years. So the first 3 years of that connection where there's transit definition, there is this illusion of wholeness that is not truly there. It's being masked by the nature of the transit environment. So, better to be free? Well, if you want the benefits of connectivity without the overwhelming glue that comes with 8 and 1s, 9 and 0s, 7 and 2s, that will bond you together very, very tightly, but inevitably leads to that sense of being suffocated by your partner, a lack of freedom, well, you get the benefits of both in a 6 and 3 or a 5 and 4. The union when the two of you want that connectivity and the freedom to be who you are at the same time.